Welcome to another edition of Client Success Stories. I'm Coach Jackson, and I'm here today with Sean, who absolutely annihilated the 16-week program. Now, this man here in front of me, he did so well. He lost 32 pounds, 14.5% body fat, 5 inches off of his waist, and another 3.5 inches off of his hips. He's in the Action Jackson Fitness Hall of Fame, and I want to welcome him to share his story. Sean, welcome.
Thanks, Jackson. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Gosh, man, you got incredible results. I'm very excited to kind of dive into your story. There was an injury right when you first started and all kinds of other things that you overcame. But let's kind of rewind a little bit before you even got into the program and just talk through like where were you at and like before we even started working together.
Let's see. Relatively most of my life, I've at least been involved in some exercise. Um, I joined the Navy right out of high school, spent 6 years in there. You kind of learn, at least the basics of working out. You have to stay in shape for that. Let myself go a little bit after that and would kind of get back into the fitness, jump back on the fitness train and then kind of fall off and then jump back on and then fall off. Got really into cardio about 20, maybe 16 or so, got a Peloton bike. And that's all I did was Peloton for probably 3 or 4 years. And I worked myself down to about 185, I think, at one point, but I was just super skinny, like no muscles. I didn't do any resistance training whatsoever. And then I think it was about 2020 when I got my tonal and I figured out who you were. And I realized that you did a whole personal training business. And I think I reached out to you once in about 2022, and it was right before I was making a move to Florida. And so I said, "Hey, how's this whole thing work?" And you said, "Let's schedule a call." And I didn't pull the trigger on that. I was like, "Hey, I'm about to move. Let me get settled and then give you a call." And so about 2 years later, 3 years later, I decided one day when I was sitting out on my back porch and I caught a glimpse of myself in the pet, we have a glass door, caught myself and I didn't like what I saw. I said, wow, I've really let myself go here. I was still working out on the tonal and trying the best I could, but I always felt like I was missing something. I didn't have the direction. I didn't know which way to go. I'm doing all these different workout programs, but like, what am I supposed to be doing? And that same day, I saw an ad. I think it was something you had put out there. And I said, you know what? I think it's time. And I went back to our last conversation, which I still had on Facebook Messenger. It was kind of funny. It was like 2 or 3 years prior. And I said, okay, I'm serious now. Let's talk. And we talked, and you're like, okay, let's do it. So we did it.
I kind of actually forgot that we had spoken so long ago and that you kind of came back around because that doesn't happen very frequently. Usually there's a decision point for people, whether they want to, get serious and take it to the next level or not. So I'm kind of really shocked and blown away. Now, talk me through that mindset. So you have this kind of moment, you see your reflection, you don't like what you see. I'm guessing that was like was that the worst moment, like the kind of low that really was the trigger for you?
Yeah, I think it was. I had let's see, my son at the time, so he would have been 8, and just being able to run around with him. And I was starting to notice, like, hey, I'm getting a little too big. I have to buy, extra large shirts now. And it was just starting to get a little bit too far. I mean, my wife's pretty gracious, but she was even like, hey, okay, I mean, you're kind of starting to like, and that specific moment, that was definitely the turning point when I just happened to catch a glimpse of myself. And I'm like, I don't even know who that is.
What was the hesitation? Obviously, there was moving and those things, but what was the hesitation, I guess, take things a little bit more seriously or hire a coach? Were you just kind of nervous? Were you scared? You hadn't obviously done strength training as much. I guess walk me through what your biggest kind of hesitations, concerns were, and where your mind was at with that decision.
Well, when I first moved here, I think I just got, kind of busy with life. And like everybody does, they make excuses, kinds of excuses here. I got to go to the beach. I got to go do this. I got stuff going on with my friends every weekend. And I was also starting to really probably drink too much, eat too, bad foods all the time. You're constantly going out to different restaurants and bars. And It just, I think it after a couple of years, the novelty of that wore off, and it was like, okay, it's time to do something serious here. Let's get serious about it. And um, I think it was really that moment when I saw my reflection that I said, okay, it's time to do something. But it really cemented it when I saw it. Just so happened it was like fate brought up your video that you put out there, and when I looked up the conversation, it was still on there from when we had talked before I moved. So it was I don't know, just one of those things where I said, okay, let's do it.
The old saying is that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right?
Yeah,
So that's the
yeah.
old saying, and apparently it worked out that way. Now, what's interesting is that I wish obviously I could convince people to take their health and fitness more seriously, or I could just give a talk or put out a piece of content, and people go, "Oh my gosh, I really need to do this." But really, for the most part, people have to make that decision themselves. I can't want it more than you want it, or anybody else wants it. It's just not going to work that way. So I'm so glad that you kind of had this moment, this kind of turning point, this revelation, if you will, say, oh man, I got to take this more seriously. Outside just the aesthetics, and obviously your wife having a conversation with you, what were maybe some of the other driving points? Were you concerned about, your energy? Were you concerned about just keeping up with your kids? I guess, what were some of the deeper driving motivations for why you want to do this journey?
I think it was, at the time I was 39. I'm still 39. Actually, I turned 40 in about a week and a half. And so that was on my mind, like, hey, I'm going to be 40. Like, it'd be kind of nice to actually be more, in better shape and in better shape than most of the people that I know. And it was kind of just a good reset to kind of look at my life and say, okay, what areas do I need to maybe tweak and improve upon here, right? So, like I said, I was going out too much. I was drinking a lot of beers, which that's not good, and a lot of, just anything I wanted, and which, fast forward, spoiler alert, you can still do that. You just do it a lot differently, right? And you do it with a little bit more precision and planning. But so yeah, I think it was really just a culmination of I need to get better so I feel better about myself. So when I see that reflection, I don't go, "Ooh, who's that?" Right? And just be maybe a better role model for my son too. And I think that was really, yeah, pretty much it.
Wow, that's incredible, Sean. I've said it many times with my relationship with my dad. Getting a weight set when I was 5, working out with him was just incredible. And one of the most special moments that I just recently had, I hope I don't cry, um, was just the other day. My son was born, and I got to FaceTime with my dad, and I got to show him my son, and he just started crying, and I started crying just thinking about all the connection points that we've had. Fitness being a big part of that, athletics, all the time I spent working out with my dad, practicing with my dad. These were all just incredible connection points that I've had with them. And seeing my dad's reaction to seeing his grandson and holding my son in his arms and thinking about all the things that we're going to do together, it was just such an incredible experience. So I'm so glad that you've done this journey and gone on this, because then you can share those kinds of moments with your son. And that's just really incredible. And obviously be around a really long time with them. My dad's 76 now, and when I go visit him, we still go out to the gym together and work out. And that's just incredible, to go to the gym and work out. And we're talking, 40, almost 40 years later, from our first workout together to our last work, some of our last workouts together. It's just incredible. So that's a really special, special thing. I'm so glad that you've obviously made this transformation. But let's dive into the transformation. I shared the numbers, but let's talk about maybe some of the good things, but also some of the challenges that you face, because you had a number of challenges. People think they hear these numbers, lost 32 pounds, cut down 14.5% body fat, going from 26% all the way down to 11.5, which is incredible. Losing 5 inches off of your waist, getting down to a 33.5-inch waist, even losing 3.5 inches off your hips. Incredible transformation. These are great numbers, especially given the time frame that you did them in. But a lot of people hear that and they go, "Oh, well, that it must have been easy. He must not have had any obstacles or any travel or anything." And I think it was anything but that. And when people, this is one of the reasons why I do these interviews, is I want to share the behind the scenes of all the challenges. So you see the reflection, you get serious, we have another conversation, you're like, I got to do this. You sign up, and then what happens? Go into it.
Well, before I even get there, the reason I really wanted to work with you was on that initial call, you spelled it out and said, we have four pillars here, and you went through each one of them, and you told me, okay, you got diet, you got training, right, education through learning about working out, but also learning about nutrition. Mindset is a big one. And that's what really drew me in, I think, because you could probably go to any gym and find somebody that's going to tell you, okay, here's a program and, lift these weights, you'll get stronger. And that's great, but it's not sustainable, right? Because the minute you lose that connection, you're pretty much dead in the water. What drew me to you was I'm going to teach you how to do this for the rest of your life. And that was like a good selling point for me because I'm like, this is awesome. It's not just some kind of temporary 3 or 4 month program where it's like, okay, now good luck, go back to what you were doing. And so I just wanted to put that out there.
You have to think about your headspace and your mindset, whatever word you want, wording what you want to use. It's kind of semantics, but if you don't, then again, to your point, you're not going to stick to it. We can give you the perfect training program, the perfect nutrition plan. We can give you all the accountability and support that we want to give you. But if you don't change up here and you don't kind of update your software, if you will, we all have these phones that we run around with all day. And what do? We upgrade these phones all the time. Software upgrades, new app upgrades, the new iOS, new phones coming out. I want to get the new phone, all the upgrades, but we rarely upgrade our mindset. And a strength training program like this is a perfect option to do that, or opportunity, because fitness is sort of a domino habit. You change that, it starts to change all these other things. And nothing upgrades your sort of operating system in your mind quite like changing your body, because you start to see changes, it starts to get exciting, your confidence builds, your energy changes. You start to think, if I do this, what else can I do? Which is incredible. But you also have to really work on that identity shift, because if you can't shift your identity, it's not going to stick long term. And we've seen this with clients that want to lose 10 or 15 pounds, or get shredded like you, and we've seen it with clients that lose 100+ pounds. If you don't change your identity during the process, it's never going to stick, and it's always going to feel like you're running uphill. It's never going to feel like you're running with the wind at your back, or it becomes easy, as we like to say. But once that identity shift happens and you go from, regular Sean to super Sean, or regular Sean to athletic Sean, whatever kind of, again, semantics you want to use to kind of talk about it. For me, it's Little John, Action Jackson. Little John can't conduct this interview. Action Jackson can, no problem, right? That's an identity shift. So that's a big part of this journey. So I'm glad you really saw the importance of it. And what's funny is most, especially guys, when I talk to them, they don't think they need mindset stuff. I did a call with a guy the other day, and he's like, "Oh, I don't need any mindset stuff." I'm like, if you had the mindset, you probably wouldn't need to be on the phone with me, right?
Right.
You would have you just would have done it already.
Yeah.
So I think mindset's a very important part of it, and I'm glad you recognize that. But whenever I do these interviews, people always say biggest breakthroughs are the mental ones, right? So the mental
Absolutely.
stuff is huge, and we'll dive into, of course, mental stuff as well. But as you kind of started the program, again, kind
Yeah.
of what was the big thing that happened to you?
Well, so I went on a vacation and slipped on a floor that apparently the ceiling condensation was leaking from the AC, and I had no idea why would that happen in the middle of the hallway, right? So I'm just walking along, and whoop, went down and um, ended up basically dislocating and relocating my kneecap, as I found out from the surgeon afterwards. And it was a partial tear of my MPFL, which is that little, you know, ligament that stabilizes your knee cap. And luckily, it wasn't a full tear. And he said, go to PT and you'll be able to get through it. But that was also coinciding with the exact start, I think, of the program. So I think we decided let's push it back a week and get the PT rolling, and then do a modified approach to the program. Whereas instead of doing, the full body, upper body, lower body approach, we're going to pretty much stick to upper and then incorporate full as we can. And this was really interesting. I had no idea how hard this part was going to be because As you know, phase one, your nutrition, your macros go from whatever you were at to a set amount and very minimal, if any, carbs, right? And so you're already kind of getting used to this. You're a little sluggish, you're foggy headed, and then on top of the workouts I'm doing for your program, I'm going to PT. And the PT that I went to, these guys are all like athletes, sports medicine, trainer types themselves. So they're putting me through the ringer. I'm leaving there drenched in sweat. And I'm like, yes, now I get to go home and do that again. So it was like double duty for probably the first, I'd say, 6 weeks or so. And finally, I just said, guys, I'm good. I can take it from here. And then worked with you and your team to slowly modify things and get back on track into the normal routine of the program. But that was the first thing.
How did you manage that mentally? Because most people, I mean, kind of would have probably checked out at that point and said, "Hey, give me a rain check on this for 6 months, and I'll talk to you then." How were you able to kind of mentally, at least, kind of stick with things, put one foot in front of the other, stay with it, and kind of work with us on those modifications? Because again, a lot of people would have just been like, I can't do this now."
I think for me, it was something I was already committed to, and it really helped for you guys to tell me, hey, we could work with this. Believe it or not, it's not the first injury we've coached people through, and we can modify it. And really, the biggest part of the first couple phases is really macros, sticking to those macros. And you told me, like, hey, you're going to see a transformation even just from the diet alone. And that is true. I'm living proof of that, right? Because I didn't get to hit that first phase and a half as hard as somebody who wasn't injured. And so it's just one of those things where you got to put your, priorities in order and say, hey, this is what I want to do. And I've already committed to doing it. So I'm going to do it.
You sure did. You definitely did it, and did a really great job at it. But that mindset, man, that is incredible, because so many people would have just gone in the other direction and said, it's not the right time. You know what? This is probably a sign from the universe or God or whatever that I'm not supposed to be doing this. I need 6 months. I'll revisit this later, and would have just gotten worse. But you decided, nope, it's time to start getting better, and I'm going to start doing it right now. And the other thing, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the holidays, there was kind of some other things going on. There was birthdays. There was a lot of different other challenges that you faced. And what's really interesting about you and many of the other people that have sat in that chair, did an interview with me like this, is that they all kind of committed at the beginning, and they're like, I'm doing this kind of no matter what. I remember a client that signed up, him and his wife signed up, and they lost. I think it's the record between the two of them. They lost over 150 pounds together. Her name was Robin. She lost 101 pounds working with me. His name was Lawrence, and he lost over 50 pounds working with me. And I remember they started maybe 3 weeks before Christmas. And I said, whoa, I said, do y'all want to start in the new year, make it a little bit easier on yourself? And they said, nope, we're ready to change today. And we're starting today. We don't care if it's Christmas or holidays or birthdays or whatever. We're committed, and we're beginning now. And I was like, wow. I was like, these people are either going to be one of my best clients ever, or they're going to crash and burn. And they luckily, they were incredible. They just were super committed. I guess, how were you able to kind of commit and work through some of these other challenges too? Not just the injury, but also now you got the holidays and you got birthdays and other things going on.
Well, another thing was work travel. At that time, I was traveling almost every week. So on top of all of this other stuff going on, this new program, new lifestyle change, new macros. I remember I was in phase one and I had to go to a work trip where these guys said, "Hey, let's meet at this New Jersey diner, right?" And those things are filled with food. I mean, you could order like pretty much anything under the sun, right? And you walk in and there's this dessert counter that's about a mile long, and you're like, "Oh, that'd be good." I just walked in, sat down, and I said, "Okay, let me look at the menu." And I was like, "Oh, good, I could get a salad here, put some grilled chicken breast on it." And then I was like, "Balsamic," and the guys were like, "What's going on?" And I just told them, "Hey, I started this program." And what I found out was anybody you know worth being in your life actually listens to it, and they go, "Wow, that's amazing, that's awesome," good for you, and they kind of embrace it. They did actually tease me a little bit later when they got some pie, and they're like, "You sure you don't want some?" And I'm like, "No." Because like I could totally get away with it. Nobody's gonna know except for me, right? And that's what matters. Like, Jackson's not gonna be as hard on me as I am. So even if you knew, like, you know what I mean?
That's great, man. I love that.
So there was work travel galore, and then we had the holidays, and I think by then I might have been in a little more advanced phase, so I was at least able to say, okay, yeah, I can have holiday dinners and my untracked meal for the week. Obviously, we're going to pick Thanksgiving, right? I'm not going to blow it on something earlier in the week, and then untracked meal for Christmas, and it was just very sustainable to do that. And it's so funny looking back now. I'm like, that's pretty much what I do all the time now. So it's really just second nature. And I'll tell you another thing. When I first started the macro tracking, I thought I was going to lose my mind. I was like, okay, this MyFitnessPal app, I've used this before, not like this though. Not where I have like macro targets and specific goals every day. And you don't really realize how, at least in my case, how little I knew about nutrition until I sat down and started going, okay, how am I supposed to fill these buckets up with, carbs, fat, and protein? How am I supposed to make this work? I had to go shopping for a bunch of stuff and just trial and error. You kind of start learning your go-to, foods for certain things. Like I know if I get chicken breast and I do this amount, it's going to be this much protein. And you just kind of really build it in. So that was really cool the way that you approach it, which is kind of like teach a man to fish as opposed to fishing for him, because otherwise you're never going to make it. You can't have somebody, I mean, unless you're a, multi gazillionaire and you have your own personal chef and all that stuff, I guess. But I don't. So I've learned to really, do it myself. And so that was a big hurdle at the beginning, doing that plus traveling. And I got really close with Heather and learned a lot about, hey, what are good snacks to take on an airplane? What are good things to travel with? And for a while there, I even remember one time I went as far as I had my own little salad container, bringing it through TSA and like eating it in the airport. And I'm like, this is something I would have never done before, right?
Incredible. That's a high level of commitment, my friend. And obviously, this is exactly why you got such great results and incredible results, really. But to have that level of commitment to prepare, to learn, and approach it in a way that it's not like, oh gosh, I have to do this, this stinks, but more so like, I'm learning by doing this. The insights I'm going to gain are going to be helpful. I'm building skills here. And that's how we want people to approach it, because we're not trying to make you track macros because we're trying to punish you. We're trying to do it because we want you to build a skill. We also want you to get insights into what you're doing, how much food you actually really need, what your like go-to meals look like, how much you should be eating, how much protein, the insights and things, how to distinguish between protein, carbs, and fats so you can adjust things if you need to later. Like the insights, the awareness you're gaining is so crazy. It's so helpful. It's no different than if you were struggling to pay off a credit card, we make you track every dollar. And if you go to an app like You Need a Budget, or if you read Dave Ramsey's books, he does the same thing. It's like literally tracking where every dollar goes so you can gain those insights, awareness, and kind of get out of debt or pay off a card or maybe invest for your future. It's the same idea. These are skills that you're building, insights that you're gaining, awareness you're learning, and it's only going to help you later down the road. And it doesn't mean you need to track macros for the rest of your life. You certainly could if you get good enough at it, which many of our clients do, but it's also a great skill to have in your back pocket and usually kind of understand portions better. Then you can go out to eat. You understand how much you're getting. You know the differences. And really, you can now get to a point where you don't necessarily need to track forever, but you can. And if you need to, you can always pull it out. But you get such good awareness. It's just incredible. I really can't think of anything that gives you more insights quicker than what you did, which is why we do it with clients. So that's fantastic. Now, I want to ask one question about your commitment level here, because I think this is so interesting. So once you committed and made this decision, like you were in, and whether it was the travel, like nothing was going to stop you. The injury wasn't going to stop you. Nothing was going to stop you. And I love that. Where do you think that came from? And why do you think you didn't have that before you joined the program?
I think I might have already had it. I just wasn't channeling it in this aspect of my life. I guess that's a good way to put it, right? Like
That
career
is
wise, I've
interesting.
always had it.
That is
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Expand on that, please, because I talk to a lot of guys just like you, a lot of girls too, a lot of women who are really high powered and just excel. in certain areas of life. Could be their career, could be their relationships, or their maybe their finances, or even their family, but are very good at something. And what you just said was really interesting. Is like I had it, but I just had it, wasn't applying it. I was applying it in these other areas. So just
Yeah.
go into that.
Yeah, like career wise, academically, I've always excelled, and it's kind of just been a natural thing where it's like, face forward, continue to do it. Like when I left the military, I went to college after since I joined out of high school, and I went through it, and I think I got a B in one class. It was just one of those things where it's like, this is my mission and this is my goal, and I'm gonna get it no matter what. And then throughout my career, it's just been pretty much success there too. And I think I might have just kind of put this thing off there like, oh, this is something I just don't know how to do. This is something I'm just not good at. I don't know what to do with this. And you just kind of lose sight of, I guess, your path there. And a lot of the stuff that I learned in this program, I mean, I definitely learned stuff, don't get me wrong, that I didn't know before. There's a lot of stuff there. I could go on forever about that. But what I really learned, I think, was like, hey, that same mindset that you take from this program, you're already doing it in these other areas. So really, it's not any different. You're just kind of turning it on for that category of your life. I don't know that I've actually thought about that until you just said all that. So it like literally just came to me. I mean, that's pretty much how I feel now looking back. And at the beginning, I thought I don't know why I did this. There was a couple of times where I'm like, oh, this is driving me nuts. Like I'm so hungry, I just want to eat, but I got to track all this stuff, and you just kind of fumble around at first, and then after a while, you just get really good at it. And uh, to your point, like I don't have to track macros anymore. I just still do. Because for me, it's like just easier, especially when you're mixing certain things you don't normally eat, so you have an idea of what it is. And I know you're pretty good at it, but I'm not so good at like I can't take two pieces of grilled chicken breast and go, this one's it's 150 and this one's 120. I just am not that great at that. So I use the scale every day for pretty much everything. And so yeah, in fact, when you just did that macro tracking challenge, I was like, oh, I got this. I do this all the time. And I had a couple work trips in there too, and I think I took my son to Legoland, and I was still on the winner list for that too because I'm like challenge accepted. I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that. And I'll give one little tactical thing for people before we go back to a mindset thing. But a tactical thing is even if you're not tracking macros, get a food scale and use it because you'll see where your gaps are. Usually, with most people, they screw up on a few major things, and that causes a lot of kind of issues. For example, I'll see this all the time. People are like, okay, I'm going to get serious about my health. I'm going to start eating salads. Great, start eating salads. You put a bunch of stuff in a bowl, greens, veggies, all that stuff. Maybe put some grilled chicken in there, but then put ranch dressing on it, or maybe take even a ball of olive oil, which is healthy, and then just cover it in olive oil. And it's like you just added 400 calories worth of olive oil. Like holy, like what? Like you just destroyed your calories for the day. But people don't understand that. They think, well, if it's olive oil, it's healthy, and if it's all these great healthy foods, then there's no problem. But what you got to understand is, yes, healthy foods matter, and they're going to make you feel better. They're going to help you build muscle and recover, and all those things, and have energy. But you can also eat too many healthy foods, and that's where you got to get the right amounts as well. It's giving your body enough of what it needs in the right amounts at the right times. And if you get that right, then the body changes. So get a food scale, even if you're not full blown tracking macros, and just use it for certain things like olive oil or dressings or a few things, and just kind of notice and get, oh wow, that was 300 calories. The insights will be huge. But the other thing I want to mention is that you kind of said this is like I had this ability to commit, and a lot of people think that if you're not super fit or even if you're overweight or obese that you must not be disciplined. And you hear this all the time. I hear people all the time tell me, Jackson, I'm just not disciplined. I need more discipline. And it's like, actually you are really disciplined. You're a partner at a consulting firm, or you're a partner at this accounting firm. Like clearly you're extremely disciplined. Like one of the clients that we helped lose over 100 pounds, his name was Connor. He lost over 100 pounds. Incredibly successful guy, career guy, incredibly successful. And I'm like, you are already extremely disciplined. You're just doing it in this one area and you're going 150% in this one area. We just need to balance it out a little bit and take some of that and put it over here. And if we do that, we're going to be just fine. And I think that's a really important point for people who are listening. If you don't have the results that you want, my guess is take a look at your life. You probably are disciplined, just not quite in this area yet. And another thing that you said was, I wasn't good at first. I was kind of fumbling around, kind of, you feel like a drunk monkey or like a fish out of water or something. And you just have to kind of be willing to be a fool for a period of time before you can gain the skill and the mastery of things. And if you kind of like fumble around a little bit for a while, you kind of learn, you get some direction, you can really master just about anything and get to, at least, Tim Ferriss is famous for saying this, you can get to 90%, in anything very quickly. And I think that's really true. So those are really important points. Let's talk about some of the benefits here. Let's kind of make a transition. So what are some of the benefits since you've gone through the program? Like, where are you at now compared to where you were prior to?
I definitely feel better. That's a big one. I think I might have had like an undiagnosed sleep apnea thing going on there for a while
I know
before I
what that's
started
about.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that seems to have worked itself out with just losing a lot of weight, in that area helps with that. Definitely more energy and people notice, which is good. For some, a little external validation is good now and then, I guess. But most importantly, I notice it, like if I'm getting out of the shower, I look in the mirror, or I'm working out, I can see my reflection in the tonal. And it's just like, yes, you're doing this. And the other thing I noticed is it's having a positive impact on others. My wife and son have been really focused on, eating healthy with me. After it took a little while. I mean, they still aren't where I'm at, and I don't want, they don't need to be if they don't want to be. It's just I went through this whole program, and I just have this willpower to do this, and I think they see that. You know, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, you told me at the beginning, throw out all the snacks from the pantry and clear it out and stuff. You know what I did? I didn't do any of that personally. I left it all in there, and I looked at it and I just ignored it. I was like, I don't even care. This is totally like turned off to my mind right now. My son, he's got all this kid snacks in there, and it would have been easy to do that, but I was just like, no. So that I kind of look back and I've learned that I have that willpower too, and that ability to change and ability to just apply that to whatever I want in my life. So it's really kind of just given me more confidence, I think, with relationships at work and things like that. I had a good friend of mine who was kind of slipping in that same path, and he's kind of turned himself around and has now embraced it. He's working out a lot more, and him and his wife are working with a nutritionist and eating a little better. And so I think it really does have an impact, not just you, but those around you as well. And it's just it's really cool, and really being able to um, you know hone yourself in all week. If you have something coming up, like, hey, I'm going to go to a backyard barbecue on Saturday, then you go, okay, let's plan for that. Let's plan around that. So maybe I'm not going to have an untracked meal during the week. I'm going to save that. And then the day of, I'm going to get a workout in. I'm going to eat lean protein, keep the keep the carbs and fat kind of low. Um, and that way, when I do that, I'm kind of minimizing any negative impact. And at the same time, I'm enjoying myself and don't have any guilt afterwards. I don't feel like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Right. And that's the biggest message is like you told me, I think you summed it up one day and said, uh, do things right 90% of the time so that you can enjoy that other 10%. And I think that's what most people don't do is they have that flipped. They they do things right 10% of the time when it comes to fitness and nutrition and mindfulness and all the four aspects of this. And then 90% of the time they're just kind of, oh well, maybe 2 nights a week they'll eat healthy, and then Friday comes along, and then Saturday, Sunday spirals into Monday. Before you know it, it's Tuesday, and you're like, oh, I need to eat healthy. So it's just really teaches you how to plan properly too, and execute things smartly, and not just like wing it. Like Yeah, a lot of those airport trips I had, I had my bag sitting over there in the corner still. It's filled with like, healthy stuff, so that if I got to go somewhere, I know I got it.
That's incredible. One of my mentors always said, plan and prepare when you're at your best so you can execute flawlessly when you're at your worst. And you kind of summed it up there. And the other thing that I want to mention is a lot of people struggle with this kind of on or off. They're perfect. And then they go to the barbecue, to your point, and then it spirals and it just keeps going. Oh, well, I had a couple of beers. I had some barbecue. My whole week is toast now. So now I might as well just say, screw it. Give me a milkshake and let's go to In-N-Out. And they just kind of get way off track. And what you have to do is, to your point, plan and prepare a little bit. And this doesn't mean you're doing spreadsheets before, but it's just like, hey, I'm going to this barbecue later. Let me just make a couple adjustments, maybe earlier in the week or the day before, so that I can have a little wiggle room so I can go to the barbecue and have, a beer or two and have some whatever they're making there. So you can have some of those things and indulge a bit, but not get off track. It becomes part of the plan. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to plan for this and I'm going to make adjustments. And then I can go there, execute guilt free, to your point, and you just pick up right where you left off. And I think that really is the mindset piece. That is the magic, because it's not mechanics. It's not I can't eat healthy or I don't know how or any of that. It's managing your mind and your emotions as you go through these ups and downs of the journey. Managing your mind and emotions when you go to a barbecue and being able to get back on track. That's the bigger picture and the bigger point. That's how you go from a diet, which is temporary, to just changing how you eat, or a lifestyle, or an identity, really, which is even more powerful. That's the major shift that we talk about. And I love what you said. This is more important because people see. I always tell people your journey is more important than you think. People are watching you and you don't even know it. So do those things, because it's going to have an impact on your loved ones, your friends, your family, people at work. They're going to notice and they're going to be like, wow, Sean did it. Maybe I can. And it doesn't mean they have to go to the extremes that you do or as far as you take it. But even if they improve 10, 20, 30%, that's huge. And you just think about the kind of compounding impact that then has on your friends, your family. If they change a little bit, then they are going to impact somebody else, and it just kind of goes and reverberates from there. That's how you really make massive change in the world, right? That's how we go from having heart attacks every 36 seconds to curing this obesity epidemic that we have in this country.
Yeah, and I think that once you become confident in your new skin, for lack of better terms, you don't have a problem telling people like, "Hey, I'm doing this, and this is how I live my life." Like I just had a friend recently. We hung out on a weekend, I think a couple weekends ago, and we got pizza. And he called me up this past week and he said, "Hey, you want to go out tonight for pizza?" And I said, "No, man, that's not how I do it." Like, I don't just willy nilly. I already got my stuff planned for the day. Weekdays, I'm pretty much, set, and that's just kind of how I do things. And we'll pick another day on a weekend sometime and go out and grab some more pizza. But different place, because that pizza wasn't even that good. I wasted it. But
You got to make
um,
sure those calories count if you're going to take them in, right?
that is another thing. You really do start learning, like, hey, there's this place I've always wanted to try. Let's make sure it's good first, though. And the same thing going back to like what we're talking about with planning workouts, right? I have a very unpredictable schedule. In addition to having a family, my job in consulting, things pop up. I mean, that's just a given day. Every day's a crapshoot. So I'll have okay, here's an hour window where I can work out today, and then something will happen, and I have to get on a call. And you got to be able to pivot and kind of say, okay, I'll do it at 4. It's not my preferred time, but I'll do it, right? There were times where I had to wake up super early to get a workout in before a trip just to make my workouts for the week, right? And I never really thought to myself, what happens if I don't? And because it's just not an option. Like missing a workout, unless I'm like deathly ill or something, Like I just rolled my ankle a couple weekends ago. I think I told you that. And so we just modified it, and I just kind of took half a week off the lower body stuff, and then I realized, oh, and actually it's not affecting that, so we're good. Kind of went right back to it. Um, Getting back on things is a big thing that I've learned from this, where it's really impactful. Is you go on that vacation, sure, have fun. You know what's funny though is I nobody was like holding a gun to me saying you got to work out while you're on this vacation, right? You weren't there, um, as far as I know. But so you're on this vacation, and you just naturally, like after a day or two, you're like, hey, um, I need to work out, and it's just kind of cool. Um, we took another vacation where we were doing a lot of hiking, and that one didn't bother me as much because we were moving around the whole time and active. But a cruise was like, yeah, I need to work out anyway. And as soon as I got back, it's like, okay, the party's over, go back to normal, and you just don't have that lingering guilt or, oh, I ruined it from this whole past week, so let me just go out and get pizza and beer. You just kind of snap back to it. And so that change in the mindset that occurs to people that are successful in this program just kind of changes your whole life and makes you look at things differently. Like when I started, like you said, I was like in the 216, 218, somewhere around there. And when I got down below 200, I was like, okay, that's my new personal threshold, and I don't really want to go above that. And then I got down to 190, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of my new benchmark, right? And my new milestone. I don't really want to go above that. Unless, of course, you're, adding on muscle, and eventually over time you get up there. But yeah, so I've just kind of set benchmarks and goals for myself as I've increased and succeeded in the program, right? Like at first, what did I tell you? Oh, I don't need to have like a six pack or anything. I'm not going for that. I just want to, maybe have a flatter stomach and maybe add on a little bit of muscle, right? And as you go through, you can start fine tuning and saying, okay, well, I got there. Now let's focus on what's next, right? And really not looking at the whole. Um, I think it's just take it day by day would be good advice, right? Because if you look at sometimes the whole picture is overwhelming. So if you're like, how am I going to get from here to looking like Jackson? Well, you didn't do that in a day, first off, right? And it was an iterative process over time and learning as you go and tweaking things and figuring things out. And that's what I've kind of learned about this too, is like with myself, it's progress, not perfection, right? And be a little easier on yourself and don't beat yourself up. If you have a misstep, just get back on track. If you aren't getting somewhere quick enough, it probably just means you need to slow down anyway.
Incredible, Sean. So many great lessons that you've shared during this whole interview, but there was a few great ones there. And what you were talking about with working on a vacation, it's not, oh my God, Jackson's going to know if I don't work on a vacation. What it becomes is like you want to do that because you change who you are. The person that you are changes, your identity changes such that if you don't work out when you're on vacation, sometimes like if it's a snowboarding trip or if you're being really active, as you mentioned, you probably don't need to, and you probably won't have that desire. But if you're sitting around at the pool all day, you're gonna go, I need to do something here, I need to be a little active, I need to go do something. You're gonna feel that pull because that becomes who you are. And then when you get home, you go, man, I can't wait to get back into my routines and start eating healthy or get a salad. For me, when I get home, like I want to eat a huge bowl of broccoli because it's like that's who I am, nourishing my body. It feels so good to reclaim that identity and get back into it. But when you go on a trip or a vacation, you don't lose the identity. It's not a full like vacation. Sean, shows up and just starts crushing beers and eating cheeseburgers and everything. Now, again, you could still have some beers. You can have a burger. That's not a problem. But you're also going to be like, I'm going to have that burger, but I'm going to go to the gym earlier today and get a little bit of a pump on, and I'm going to earn some of that. It just your mind changes. It's really incredible. And again, you just shared so many different perspectives, chunking, breaking things down to smaller things. You don't start and say, okay, even if you have the desire to climb to the top of Mount Everest, you start by going to just getting there and then going to base camp 1 and then base camp 2, and you break it down into these milestones. And we do the same thing with clients. You don't start and say, okay, very rarely do we start and say, we want to get this huge, crazy goal. Let's start with some milestones and let's break it down. And then when you start achieving things, your confidence starts to improve. And then what happens is that you start saying, well, what else can I do? How much further can I take this? Wow, this is exciting. And sometimes, of course, people will hit a point where they'll say, I really don't want to go much further than this. I love where I'm at. Great, that's totally fine. Other clients get a little bit more ambitious and say, I want to take this to the next level and see how far I can take it. Great, we can do that too. That's the fun of this and why this journey is so exciting and sort of also never ending, right? It's the never ending journey, but that's what's exciting about it because as soon as you get to the top of every other mountain, there's another mountain. And I can't remember which climber it was, but one of the climbers who I believe climbed to the top of Mount Everest, when he got to the top, it could have been Sir Edmund Hillary. When he got to the top, he said, what were you thinking? And he said, I saw this other mountain over there and I was thinking, what would my path be to get to the top? And they said, why would you be thinking about that? And he's like, why not? If the mountain's there, you can climb it. And that's just kind of how these things work. You get one goal and then you go, what else can I do? Let's get the next one. Well, Sean, I really do want to be respectful of your time here. So I'll ask you kind of one final kind of wrap up question and we'll kind of call it a day. But if you had some advice for people out there or some last kind of insights or breakthroughs that you'd love to share, just kind of give any kind of last minute things that maybe we didn't touch on yet or things that you just want to really emphasize.
I would say that if you feel like you're not figuring things out yourself, definitely, reach out and find somebody that can help you along the way and give you that positive encouragement and show you the right way to do things, keep you accountable. That's really what I think you provide to all these successful people that you have in your, wall of fame there. I think everybody there can pretty much testify to that fact. Um, and it's really just little improvements along the way, right? And just looking back and saying, "Hey, I'm proud of myself. I just accomplished this, you know, milestone out of my list of 15, right?" And just incrementally improving and making sure you have that reflective moment. That's one thing you told me early on was don't worry so much about that. You got to take a pause and go, look where you just, you started here and look how far you've come. Because it's very easy for highly driven people to just want to go, oh, I don't care about that. That's not where I want to be yet. I want to be way down the road here. And it's like, look how far you've already driven. So, um, yeah, I would say, I recommend this program, obviously, hands down. But um, even if it's not the right program for somebody that's watching this, just kind of take the advice that we've given here to heart because it really does work. And yeah,
Well, thank you, Sean. Incredible journey, man. I really feel honored and grateful for the opportunity to coach you for as long as I've been able to. It's been an incredible experience to be a small part of your journey. You put in the work. You were the one that executed. I obviously just guided your actions and kind of told you generally what to do and made the tweaks. But you had to execute, which is not easy. So thank you for doing that. It really means a lot to me that you trusted us with your health, your fitness, and trusted us to lead you on this transformation. And I just want to say thank you again for doing this journey because all the people that you've impacted, not just from doing this interview, but of course this helps as well, but for doing this and inspiring your family, your friends, the people around you, everybody who I know is benefiting from you improving yourself, for you getting better, getting stronger, more confident, being around for more years. It's just incredible. And especially for doing this for your family. Gosh, like I said, seeing the birth of my son, what an experience. And it made me want to like go run through a brick wall. And I was like, I will do anything for this kid. But what's funny is a lot of people will say they'll do anything for their family, but they won't work out 3 times a week or eat healthy or put down the drinks. And
yeah,
you are a prime example of somebody that'll do anything for them, and you did. So congratulations, Sean. Thank you again. Action Jackson Fitness Hall of Fame member. I really do appreciate you. Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.